Let's talk about the 2019 Indian general election. I mean, this was an event on a scale that's hard to even wrap your head around. It was complex, it was high stakes, and it totally reshaped the country's political landscape. So, what we're going to do here is break down exactly how one of the biggest victories in modern Indian history was won. Okay, just to set the stage, let's start with this scale. We're talking about 900 million eligible voters. Think about that for a second. That is more than the entire population of the United States and the European Union combined, all taking part in one single democratic process. It's just massive. And as you can probably guess, an electorate that big comes with a jaw-dropping price tag. Estimates put the total cost from all parties at around $7 billion. That actually made it more expensive than the US presidential election at the time. So yeah, this wasn't just the biggest election in history, it was also the most expensive. Which brings us right to the heart of the matter, the big question we're going to try and answer. How on earth was this monumental election actually won? What were the key ingredients that cooked up such a decisive result? To really get to the bottom of this, you first have to understand what was going on in the country, the national mood. And in 2019, voters were being told two completely different, totally conflicting stories about how India was doing, especially when it came to the economy. So on one side, you had the government story. They were pointing to things like low inflation, a huge tax reform with the GST, and popular social programs for things like cooking gas and electricity. Their message was simple: things are getting better, we're the fastest growing major economy. But then you had the opposition telling a completely different tale. They were highlighting unemployment at a 45-year high, serious trouble for farmers, and they were even questioning if the government's growth numbers were real. It's like they were describing two different countries. But here's the thing. This election wasn't just about jobs and the economy. Not at all. There was a whole other battlefront that had opened up, a new kind of war that was being fought entirely online. And that brings us to the digital battlefield. We're talking about a wild west of data scandals, huge amounts of money being spent online, and, of course, a whole lot of disinformation. And this whole debate just exploded into the mainstream with this one super provocative tweet from opposition leader Rahul Gandhi. He flat out accused the Prime Minister's official app of just handing over user data to American companies. Suddenly, data privacy wasn't some niche issue. It was front page news. Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, a real tit for tat. So first, the opposition makes this big claim about the Prime Minister's Namo app sharing data. The ruling party, the BJP, fires back saying, no way, that's just for analytics. But then they go on the attack, claiming the Congress Party's own app was sending user data to Singapore. And what happened next? Well, pretty soon after that accusation, the Congress app just disappeared from the app stores. And this digital fight went way beyond just those two apps. Social media, especially platforms like Facebook, turned into this massive hotbed for misinformation. And studies found it was coming from all sides. There was divisive content linked to both major parties, but also from foreign groups, especially from Pakistan, trying to stir the pot. So you've got these competing economic stories, you got this digital chaos, but underneath it all, another, maybe even more powerful force was at work. And it wasn't about a party or an ideology. It was all about one person. Some people started calling it the Modi effect. Now, to really get this, we have to talk about a concept called the personalization of politics. It sounds academic, but it's pretty simple. It's this trend where elections become less about a party's platform and more about how you feel about the leader as a person. The goal is to get voters to form a personal connection with the leader, not just the party. In a world with a million things competing for your attention, a strong personality just cuts through the noise. Now, let's look at the data, because this is fascinating. This chart shows how voters for the main opposition party, Congress, felt about the two leaders. You'd think they would strongly prefer their own guy, Rahul Gandhi, right? But look at that median line. It's only a tiny bit negative. That means even among his own party's voters, the preference for him over Modi was surprisingly weak. It just goes to show you how much personal appeal Narendra Modi had, even across party lines. So, what did that personal appeal actually do? Well, this graph shows the Modi effect in plain sight. At the bottom, you have how much more a voter liked Modi as a person. And on the side, you have the probability that they'd vote for his party, the BJP. I mean, look at that line. The connection is undeniable. The more someone liked Modi, the more likely they were to vote for his party. It's a direct link. The result of all this was pretty profound. The entire election really started to feel less like a choice between two political parties and their ideas, and more like a national referendum on one single, very dominant leader. All right, so we've looked at the economy, the digital battlefield, and the incredible power of personality. Now it's time to put all those pieces together and really dissect the anatomy of this landslide win. Okay, check this out. For months leading up to the vote, most of the opinion polls were predicting a super tight race. Some even suggested a hung parliament where nobody would have a clear majority. But then came the exit polls on the final day of voting. And suddenly, everything changed. All these agencies started predicting a huge, clear majority. The reality was shaping up to be completely different from the predictions. So what happened? Well, a huge piece of the puzzle is money. Remember that record-breaking $7 billion price tag? Research suggests that one party, the BJP, accounted for an incredible 45% of that. Let that sink in. They spent almost as much as every single other party combined. That kind of financial firepower lets you just saturate the airwaves in a way nobody else can even dream of. So when you put it all together, experts basically point to these 5 keys to victory. First, that hyper-personalized campaign built around the prime minister. Second, a laser focus on national security, especially with tensions running high with Pakistan. Third, just an incredibly effective, well-oiled party machine on the ground. Fourth, total media domination, both old and new. And finally, all of it was powered by that absolutely unprecedented level of campaign funding. And all of this leaves us with one last, really big question. And it's not just for India, it's for democracies all over the world. In this new age of politics, driven by big data, powerful personalities, and mind-boggling sums of money, what does it really take to win an election anymore? And what does that mean for all of us?